My sister stole my boyfriend and got pregnant. Years later, my father left the entire inheritance only to me. But when I refused to share it, my family betrayed me, and my ex-brother-in-law started stalking me obsessively until police arrested him. I'm 24 years old, work in digital marketing, and honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened over the last few years basically destroyed my family and almost destroyed me too. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I met Ethan like 3 years ago, he was one of those guys who seemed perfect on paper. You know, good job, nice to everyone, and best of all, he seemed genuinely interested in me, not just in dating casually. We dated for a year before I decided to officially introduce him to my family, because honestly, my family has always been complicated, and I wanted to be sure that we were serious before bringing him into all that drama. My family is like the definition of dysfunctional but pretending to be perfect. My parents, I mean, they were the type who care a lot about appearances, especially my mom. Everything had to look good to others. You know what I mean? We had to be the perfect family, even though inside everything was a mess. My sister Madison is 2 years younger than me. She was 22 at that time, and she was always the favorite. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because she was prettier, according to my mom's standards, or because she knew how to manipulate situations to get her way. But the thing is, Madison could do whatever she wanted, and my parents always found a way to justify it. Then there's Ava, my younger sister, who was like 9 when all this started. Basically a kid who had nothing to do with the disaster that was coming. The first time I brought Ethan to my parents' house was on one of those Sundays when they do family lunch. My dad was in a good mood that day, making jokes and asking Ethan about his work in finance. My mom obviously evaluated him from head to toe like a human scanner, but she seemed to approve because Ethan is one of those people who knows exactly what to say to people. Madison was there too, in that little dress she wore when she wanted attention, and I remember thinking she was being too friendly with Ethan. But honestly, at that moment, I dismissed it as my paranoia because Madison had always been like that, flirty with everyone. Ava was the only one who behaved normally. She asked me if Ethan knew how to play video games and basically ignored him the rest of the afternoon, which was refreshing. Everything seemed to be going well for the next few months. Ethan and I talked about moving in together, maybe getting married in a couple of years. We went to dinners with my family occasionally, and Madison was always there, always a little too close to Ethan, always laughing too loud at his jokes. But I trusted him, you know? And I trusted my sister too, because as complicated as our relationship was, I never thought she would be capable of doing something so horrible. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. There were signs everywhere, like those little texts Madison would send me casually asking about Ethan, or how she always found excuses to be at my apartment when she knew he was going to pick me up. The bomb exploded on a completely random night. Ethan had left his phone at my apartment, and I was literally just going to check the time because mine was charging in the room. The screen lit up with a message, and I saw Madison's name. I'm not one of those people who checks phones, seriously. But something in my stomach twisted when I saw the first words of the message. I unlocked the phone. The password was my birthday, ironically, and I started reading. I can't even describe what I felt. It was like the floor was opening up beneath me. Messages and messages from the two of them. Flirting, making plans to see each other behind my back, talking about things that made me want to vomit. The messages went back like 3 months. I mean, this had been going on since shortly after I introduced him to my family. I confronted Ethan that same night when he came back for his phone. He tried to deny it at first, then tried to minimize it like, oh, we're just friends. You're overreacting. But I had read enough to know exactly what was happening. I told him to leave, that I never wanted to see him again, and he had the nerve to start crying and saying he loved me, that it had been a mistake. A 3-month mistake. Sure. I threw him out of my apartment that night and blocked his number immediately. But obviously I couldn't just block Madison. The next day I drove to my parents' house. I arrived like 8 in the morning on a Saturday because I knew everyone would be there. My mom opened the door in a bathrobe and saw my face, and I think she knew immediately that something bad had happened. I went straight in to look for Madison. I found her in her room, still in pajamas, and when she saw me come in like a storm, her face went white. I yelled everything at her, showed her the messages on my phone because I had taken screenshots, told her exactly what I thought of her. My parents came running because of the screaming, and Madison started crying, obviously, playing her victim role. But this time was different, because I had proof, and my parents couldn't ignore it. My dad got furious. Like I'd never seen him like that. And he told Madison she had to leave the house, that he couldn't believe what she had done. My mom tried to defend her at first, saying there surely was an explanation, that maybe Ethan had manipulated her. But even she couldn't deny the obvious when she read some of the messages. Madison packed her bag that same day, crying and saying she was so sorry, that she didn't know why she had done it, all that garbage people say when they get caught. I left there feeling completely empty. Because I had lost my boyfriend and my sister on the same day. And even though Madison was terrible, she was still my sister. You know what I mean? The following weeks were horrible. Madison had gone to live with a friend, and I tried to continue with my normal life, working from home and basically avoiding going out because I didn't want to run into anyone I knew. My mom called me every 2 days, trying to smooth things over, saying Madison was very sorry. That family comes first. All that shit they say when they want you to forgive the unforgivable. I told her no, that Madison had crossed a line that can't be uncrossed, that I needed time. But the truth is, I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive something like that. And then came the news that basically changed everything. Madison was pregnant. By Ethan. Obviously. My mom told me crying on the phone, as if somehow this made things better or worse. I don't know. And what killed me was that my parents immediately went into Madison protection mode. Suddenly, she was no longer the traitor who had destroyed her family. Now she was the single mother who needed support. My dad let her come back home. My mom started buying her baby stuff. And I was left as the bitter sister who couldn't get over it. I tried to explain to them that this didn't change anything, that Madison was still a person who had done something unforgivable. But they didn't want to listen. My mom literally told me I had to think about the baby, that it was my nephew or niece, that family has to stick together. I told her I didn't want to be part of that family if it meant pretending everything was okay. I cut contact with all of them, except Ava. The poor girl had nothing to do with this, and it wasn't fair to make her suffer for the horrible decisions of the adults around her. I kept talking to her by message, making sure she knew I loved her and that none of this was her fault. Months passed, and according to my cousin, who was my only source of information about the family, because she did understand why I was angry, Madison and Ethan started officially dating. They literally built a relationship on the ashes of mine, and the worst part is that my family completely accepted it. When the baby was born, I received like 20 messages from different aunts and uncles telling me I should go meet my nephew, that the baby wasn't to blame for anything. And they were right, the baby wasn't to blame. But I also couldn't just show up there and pretend to be the happy aunt when seeing Madison and Ethan together. Made my stomach turn. What followed was even more surreal. Madison and Ethan got married when the baby was like 6 months old. A small wedding, according to my cousin, because Madison was being considerate of me by not doing something big, as if that made any difference. My mom apparently told everyone at the wedding that I couldn't attend because I was traveling for work. But they didn't even have the guts to admit I didn't want to see them. They built this whole alternative narrative, where I was the one who had chosen to distance myself for mysterious reasons, not because they had betrayed me in the worst possible way. During all this time, like a 1.5 or 2 years, I think, I continued with my life as best I could. I got a promotion at work, moved to a better apartment, dated some people, but nothing serious because honestly I couldn't trust anyone after what happened. I talked to Ava regularly. She was like 11 years old by then, and she kept me updated on basic family stuff without getting into drama. Sometimes I wondered if I was being too harsh, if I should try to fix things. But then I remembered the messages on that phone and knew I had made the right decision to walk away. And then my dad died. Completely unexpected for me, although it turns out it wasn't so unexpected for the rest of the family. My cousin called me crying to tell me, and I was in shock because no one had told me he was sick. Turns out he had been having heart problems for months, had been in and out of the hospital, and no one thought to tell me. Or maybe Madison told them not to tell me, I don't know. When I asked why they hadn't let me know, my mom said they didn't want to worry me, that I had made it clear I didn't want to be part of the family, as if that meant I didn't deserve to know my father was dying. I went to the funeral, obviously. It was the most awkward thing in my life. Madison was there with Ethan and the baby, acting like the perfect devastated daughter. My mom basically ignored me except to give me a quick hug that felt obligatory. Some relatives asked me where I had been, why I hadn't come to visit when Dad was sick, and I had to explain over and over that I didn't know, that no one had told me anything. Ava was the only one who stayed with me for most of the service, holding my hand, and that was the only thing that kept me sane that day. The reading of the will was a week later. I didn't want to go, but my dad's lawyer told me it was important that I be present. I arrived expecting the worst, like that my dad had disinherited me or something for having distanced myself from the family. But what happened was completely different. The lawyer read the will, and it turned out my dad had left me 40% of his estate. Ava got 30%, my mom 20, and Madison 10. Madison's face when she heard that was something I'll never forget. She turned red, started crying, and Ethan had to take her out of the office because she was having like an attack. My mom was furious too, although she tried to hide it. She asked me if I had known about this, as if somehow I had manipulated my dad from beyond the grave. I told her I had no idea, that I was as surprised as everyone. Ava was the only one who seemed genuinely happy. She hugged me and told me Dad had always said I was the most responsible and that he knew I would use the money well. I left that office feeling completely overwhelmed because suddenly I had a significant amount of money but had also just reopened all the wounds with my family. The lawyer gave me an envelope before I left. He said my dad had left letters for each of us. I opened it in my car before driving back, and I cried so much I had to stay in the parking lot for an hour. My dad wrote that he was so sorry for not being stronger when everything happened with Madison and Ethan, that he knew what they had done was wrong but had let himself be swayed by my mom, who wanted to keep the family together at any cost. He wrote that he was leaving me more because he knew I would use the money wisely, and because he wanted to make sure I was okay. He also wrote that he hoped someday I could forgive the family, but that he understood if I couldn't, that destroyed me. Reading those words from someone who was no longer here to say them in person. Things got ugly after that, and when I say ugly, I mean really horrible. Madison and Ethan started calling me, sending messages, demanding that I give them my share of the inheritance because they needed it more, because they had a baby to support, because I was selfish and cruel. I told them to go to hell, basically, and blocked them again. But they didn't stop there. They started showing up at my work, at my apartment, knocking on the door at all hours. I had to talk to security at my building so they wouldn't let them up. My mom also completely turned against me. She called me one night screaming that I was a terrible daughter, that my dad would be rolling in his grave if he knew how I was acting. I reminded her that Dad had literally written in his will that I should receive that amount, that it was his decision, not mine. But she wouldn't listen. She said family sticks together no matter what, that I was being selfish and vengeful. I told her that maybe if they had taken my side when Madison betrayed me, things would be different now, but that it was too late for that. And then things got really scary. I started receiving messages from unknown numbers, threatening me, telling me they were going to make me pay if I didn't share the money. At first I thought it was Madison being dramatic, but the messages were different, more aggressive, darker. One night I left my work and found all 4 tires of my car slashed, completely cut, not like they deflated on their own. I called the police, filed a report, told them I thought it was my brother-in-law because the threatening messages had escalated, but they couldn't do much without concrete evidence, and my lawyer recommended I apply for a restraining order. I gathered all the threatening messages, the photos of my car, testimonies from neighbors who had seen Ethan lurking around my building, and filed the request. The court approved it surprisingly quickly, maybe because I had enough evidence that I was being harassed. Ethan went crazy when he got the notification. According to my cousin, apparently he screamed a lot about how I was destroying his family, how I was making him look like a criminal when he just wanted what was fair. But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I found a notebook at my door. It had no return address. It was just there one morning when I left for work. I opened it and felt like the world stopped. It was a notebook full of notes about me, my routine, where I went, what time I left work, who I talked to. There were photos too, photos of me taken without me noticing, at the supermarket, at the cafe, near my work, going in and out of my building. Pages and pages of detailed surveillance, and I realized someone had been following me for weeks, maybe months. I called the police immediately and showed them the notebook. They said they were going to investigate, that this was severe harassment and possibly criminal stalking. They took photos of everything, took the notebook as evidence, and recommended I temporarily move to a place where Madison and Ethan didn't know where to find me. So I did exactly that, packed a suitcase and went to a hotel in a completely different part of the city. I didn't tell anyone where I was except my lawyer and Ava, because I knew she wouldn't tell anyone. Being in that hotel was surreal. I spent my time looking out the window, jumping at any noise, constantly, checking the parking lot to see if I saw Ethan's car. I couldn't sleep well. I had nightmares about finding him in my room. I kept working from the hotel, but I couldn't concentrate. Every time my phone rang, I had a panic attack, thinking they had somehow gotten my new location. The paranoia was horrible, like I felt like I was losing my mind. But I also knew I wasn't being irrational after seeing that notebook. A week after moving to the hotel, something happened that confirmed all my fears. I was at a coffee shop near the hotel, working on my laptop, when I saw a car that looked familiar. I wasn't sure at first, but then I saw it again when I was returning to the hotel. Someone was following me again. I called the police immediately and drove straight to the nearest station. Instead of going to the hotel, I wasn't going to lead them directly to where I was staying. The police checked the security cameras from the coffee shop, and sure enough, there was Ethan, parked across the street, clearly waiting. Direct violation of the restraining order. They went to look for him immediately, and when they got to the house he shared with Madison, they found more disturbing things. Apparently, he had another notebook with updated information about me, including descriptions of the hotel where I was staying. I don't know how he found out. Maybe he followed me from my previous building. Maybe he paid someone to do it. I don't know. They arrested him that same night. Madison started calling me from every possible number, screaming that it was my fault her husband was in jail, that I was destroying her family, that the baby was going to grow up without a father because of me. I told her husband was in jail because he was a criminal stalker who had violated a restraining order, not because I had done anything wrong, but obviously she couldn't see that. To her, I was the villain who refused to share the money and who had now gotten her husband in legal trouble. I had to move hotels again after that. Because even though Ethan was detained, I didn't trust that Madison wouldn't try to find me. My lawyer kept me updated on the legal case. Ethan was formally charged with harassment, stalking, and violation of a restraining order. His lawyer tried to argue that he was only concerned about his family's welfare and that I was exaggerating everything, but the evidence was too clear. The photos, the notebooks, my car tires, everything painted a very clear picture of someone who was obsessed and potentially dangerous. The night before the hearing, Madison showed up in the lobby of my new hotel. I don't know how she found me this time. But there she was, with the baby in her arms, crying and begging me to drop the charges against Ethan. She said they were going to lose their house, that Ethan was going to lose his job, that the baby was going to suffer. I told her they should have thought about that before harassing and threatening me. I told her that everything that Rita asked happened after she decided to sleep with my boyfriend was a consequence of her own actions, not mine. I called security and they removed her from the hotel, screaming all the way to the parking lot. The hearing was quick. With all the evidence the prosecution had, the judge gave Ethan 6 months in jail and 3 years of probation when he got out. He also extended the restraining order to last 5 years. Madison was in court, crying silently, and part of me felt sorry for her. But then I remembered everything she had done to me, and that pity disappeared. She had chosen to be with someone who harassed and threatened me, and now she had to live with those consequences. I was finally able to move to a new apartment a month later, a place in a building with better security, in a different area of the city where I knew Madison and my family wouldn't find me easily. I didn't give my new address to anyone except my lawyer and Ava. I explained to Ava that I couldn't trust the rest of the family with that information. And she understood. She told me she missed seeing me, that the family wasn't the same without me, and that broke my heart because she really had nothing to do with this whole mess. Now I'm slowly starting to rebuild my life. I'm still in therapy, processing everything that happened, trying not to become completely paranoid every time I leave my apartment. The money from the inheritance I invested wisely as my dad would have wanted. I bought the new apartment and put the rest in long-term investments. I didn't touch it for anything frivolous. I wanted to honor the trust my dad placed in me. My mom tried to contact me a few weeks ago, left a voicemail saying she wanted to talk, that the family needed to heal. I haven't responded yet. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive what happened, how they chose Madison over me again and again, how they minimized what she did, how they blamed me when Ethan showed his true colors. Ava is still my only connection to that family, and it's enough for now. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if I had given in. if I had shared the inheritance, if I had tried to keep family peace at any cost. But then I remember the notebook with the photos, the threatening messages, the slashed tires, and I know I did the right thing by standing up for myself. I shouldn't have to buy my family's peace with money, and I definitely shouldn't have to tolerate abuse and harassment just because we share blood. Last week, Ava came to visit me at my new apartment. I made her pizza and we watched movies, like we used to do when she was younger. She asked me if I would ever talk to Mom or Madison again. I told her the truth, that I didn't know, that maybe someday, but I wasn't ready yet. She hugged me and told me she understood, that no matter what happened with the rest of the family, she would always love me. And that's enough for now, I guess. Having at least one person from my family who understands me, it doesn't blame me, who simply loves me without conditions. It's more than I thought I would have after all this.